Welcome to another episode of the StrengthLog. My name is Phil Willenstam. I'm a certified nutrition coach and a co-founder of StrengthLog.
And I am Daniel Richter, CEO of StrengthLog and a certified personal trainer. And it's warm in here, man.
It's fine where I'm at. You have more direct sunlight at your office than I do. We have a northern office, so no sunlight at all. But the mornings are still too warm.
They are.
I arrive at the office, very sweaty every morning, which is not something I like.
No, it's big guy problems. I'm longing for the times, as mentioned last week, I work out in my garage, so the interval of temperatures over the years, they differ quite a bit. And now, I mean, we're at like 20 to 25 centigrades in the garage still when I work out, which is way too warm.
Yeah.
In the winter tires, we might have like 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, which is perfect once they're warmed up.
Yeah.
The barbells might be a bit cold, so you might need gloves. But for the rest of the body, that's great.
I will never understand people loving the warm season.
Yeah,
it's just a hassle.
it is.
But
and you know what else is a hassle? Rows.
Nobody likes rows. We did this summer. We did a whole episode about rowing, and
exactly.
We did the Big Six series, and I think that the episode about rows was one of the least listened to.
They're about as interesting as broccoli.
I like broccoli. If I could just eat my broccoli and skip my rows, I would be a happy camper.
Yeah, I place them in the same category. But rows are good for you, for one thing, like performance and functionality-wise, but also for the looks.
Yeah.
Because when someone has a well-developed upper back from rowing or similar, that's a nice look.
Yeah.
I want more of that for me, and for everyone, for that part. But you don't see it in the mirror, and the movement or the exercise itself, well, it's not the most exciting, and I know a lot of people struggle a bit with it. So therefore, making a segue in today's topic, if it were the fact that rows would also build your guns, meaning your biceps, that would be like an extra carrot for doing the rows, which is why I'm interested in the study we're going to talk about today.
All right, so what do we have?
Yeah, so we have brand new study published just like a few weeks ago, or not even that, like 1 week ago, comparing dumbbell rows with dumbbell curls. They had participants train with one arm, they did dumbbell rows, and with the other arm, they did dumbbell curls. And then they measured their bicep growth to see the effects from either of them. So we're going to Rio de Janeiro, and this study actually has two experiments in one. The first experiment was just a single workout in which 16 trained men, so men with resistance training experience, performed dumbbell rows with one arm and dumbbell curls with the other arm, 4 sets of around 10 reps to failure each, and then they checked the swelling with ultrasound afterwards. And this is something we're seeing more and more, measurements of the swelling after participants have done an exercise, because that seems to correlate a bit with the long-term growth. And I mean, if we can establish that correlates well, that would be extremely useful. If you can make like just one workout to see if something tends to work a muscle or not. So the point is that the muscle that's been worked swells more than muscles that haven't been worked.
And I mean, that's a plausible theory or hypothesis.
Yeah, it's kind of what we hoped EMG was going to be in a way, but it turns out that isn't really the case, because we can see a lot of electric muscle activity and not see a lot of growth afterwards, because that is another thing.
Yeah.
So that was one of the experiments. Just one session where they did one exercise with one arm and one with the other and see the acute swelling. And then they took another group of participants, 9 untrained men, and put them through 8 weeks of training, where one arm trained dumbbell rows and one arm trained dumbbell curls. And now someone might think, just 9 participants and untrained at that. But given that they use one arm for each exercise, and given that the variance between or within the subject is so extremely low because they have identical diets and genetics and so on, the statistical power increases quite a lot. And in their like pre-analysis of how many they would need, they actually found that around 7 participants would be sufficient to see statistical differences in the magnitude needed. So it ain't that bad, and this is a perfect example of when it's good to use this within subject design, where one arm trains each. And also they did some thinking about whether or not they were going to use trained or untrained individuals for these 2 experiments. And they wanted trained individuals to do the acute session, because in that case they wanted someone who knew the techniques for the exercises so they could perform them correctly immediately. But then they wanted untrained participants to see larger effects in the long term, the 8-week training study, which I think is also a great idea, because say that you would have used highly trained participants for that one, and you wouldn't see any growth from one of the exercises. You wouldn't know if that is just because they are already so highly trained or because the exercise doesn't have any effect. So yeah, I think it's a good decision to use untrained participants.
I also think it's easier to get trained participants to do one single workout, doing different exercises for the different arms. But 8 weeks, like, what if the rows don't give me any growth and the curls give me a lot of growth? My arms are going to be more symmetrical after this.
Exactly.
This is out of the question. What are you, crazy?
But some poor untrained participants who don't understand.
No.
Yeah.
Sucks to
Perfect prey. So the measurements they did was ultrasound as measured, and they did so at the front of the upper arm. So we usually just say biceps, but really what we mean, or what we have on the front side of our upper arm, is the biceps brachii, the outermost one, the superficial one, the one closest to the skin. But below the biceps, we have a muscle called brachialis, which has fairly similar functions and is similar in size. So out of the hunk of meat on the front of our upper arm, about 50-50 is the bicep brachii and the brachialis. And usually you don't really need to think about this because you work them as similar exercises and they're at the fairly same place, but I'm just mentioning it for correctness. So when they measured with ultrasound, they measured all the way down to the upper arm bone. So both of these measured at the same time.
Yeah,
it's more tricky to try and find the point where the bicep brachii ends and the brachialis begins.
And when we say biceps, we usually mean both of them.
If one were to be more technically correct, you could say the arm flexors, because they flex the arm, they flex the elbow, or the elbow flexors. But then even more people wouldn't understand what we say. And we try to be inclusive here.
Absolutely.
So they measured the arm flexors, the biceps, the hunk of meat at 2 points. 1 point, 25% down the upper arm from the shoulder, and 1 point, 75% down from the shoulder. So one closer to the shoulder, one closer to the elbow. And while we're still rattling off technical terms, this is called proximal when it's closer to the center of the body. So the one is 25% from the shoulder. That is the proximal measurement. You can think about it's, I don't know, the word proxy. Doesn't that mean close or something?
Proximity.
Yeah. And the other one, the one 75% away, that would be the distal region. You can think of something that is distant. There's a greater distance to it. So proximal is closer to the body center, and distal means farther away from the body center. In case you mentioned those terms in this episode, which I think we will. So 2 measurements.
This episode is brought to you by the letter N. N as in nerd.
Yeah. All right.
Moving on.
Let's go over the training. So experiment 1. The participants warmed up and did 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps with a 2-minute rest in between. To failure, there were supervisors who encouraged them verbally and just pushed them to do this. And in experiment 2, where the untrained participants trained twice per week for 8 weeks, they did 4 sets of each exercise in week 1 to 4. And then in the last 4 weeks, they upped that by 2 sets each. So they did 6 sets per exercise in week 5 to 8. Same amount of reps, 8 to 12 reps until failure each set. Verbally encouraged and supervised by the researchers. 2 minutes of rest, 10 minutes of rest between the exercises. And they alternated the order. They randomized which arm was going to follow which training program, so to say. And they continuously adjusted the load to stay in that rep range. So very nice. Now, on to the results, man. Beginning with experiment 1, where they just did 1 workout to see the swelling. They found that the dumbbell curl caused a swelling, which meant that the muscle thickness increased acutely by 19% in the proximal measurement, the one closer to the shoulder, and 16% closer to in the distal measurement, closer to the elbow. So 19 and 16%. And in comparison, the arm that did dumbbell rows increased in thickness by 13% in the proximal region and 12% in the distal one. So 19 for the curl and 13 for the row in the measurement closer to the shoulder, and 16 versus 12 for the curl and the row, respectively, in the distal measurement. And just going off of that, I would say that, yeah, the curl seems to be the better choice, but rowing doesn't seem to be so bad.
Yeah, that's my conclusion too.
Yeah, it has like 2/3 of the swelling.
Yeah.
From the curls.
But I mean, do only one of these for a couple of years and you're going to see a huge difference.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So that was the acute swelling, just from doing the exercises and check afterwards. The pump, really. So this is kind of like some acknowledgement for the pump. If this correlates with growth. And let's see. So experiment 2, where they did 8 weeks of training. And now, once again, they checked with ultrasound, but now we're talking several days after the last workout. So this is permanent thickness increase, or not permanent, but, long-term thickness increase, actual new muscle tissue. So if we begin with the measurement closer to the shoulder, 25% down the upper arm, both the dumbbell curl and the dumbbell row saw the same muscle thickness increase, a 5% thickness increase from both in the upper portion of the upper arm. Not a ton, but it's something, I guess. This would be the region where we don't have a lot of the brachialis left. The brachialis is more concentrated closer to the elbow, so this is more just the bicep brachii territory. But even then, I suppose it might be a lot of tendon going on here.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see one measurement at the midpoint at 50%.
The peak.
Yeah, exactly.
Why didn't they measure the peak?
Yeah.
That's weird.
So, equal growth. And not a super huge growth, seeing that these were untrained participants in the upper portion. Going on down to the distal measurement point, 75% down the upper arm. If we begin with the dumbbell curl, they saw an 11% thickness increase of the muscle after 8 weeks. And this is like super standard growth, a good result from doing 4 to 6 weeks, twice per week for 8 weeks. And I mean only one exercise. So 11% thickness increase. Going on to the dumbbell row, they didn't see any thickness increase in this lower region. 1%, but that wasn't statistically significant.
There you go. Rows continue to suck.
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
But are you surprised?
I mean, just going from the swelling in the first experiment, I would have expected to see like half the growth or something. So if the dumbbell curl caused 11% to increase, maybe we could see like 5% in this region. Once again, wouldn't have hurt with some more participants, I suppose.
Probably not. Would you say that the dumbbell row is a more technical lift than the dumbbell curl?
No, not really.
So that's not a factor here.
No, I don't think so. Especially when you have people next to you all the time instructing you how to do them. But I would say that you can perform the dumbbell row in quite different ways. And we talked about this at length in the rowing episode you mentioned. If you pull the dumbbell more towards your hips, then you're gonna get less bicep involvement. But if you pull it closer to, say, your armpits or your shoulder, you're gonna get more bicep in there. So that might affect these results. And when I do dumbbell rows, because I'm a bicep kind of guy, I pull them higher towards the shoulder-ish.
I think I pull mine somewhere in between, in the middle.
Yeah.
It feels good.
So, no cigar for rows here. At least not in the distal region.
Oh, but it feels like you have more meat down there, I say, looking at my puny arms.
I think so too. It's going to differ between individuals, how they look, but yeah, I think so too. And I do believe that closer to the elbow, it's going to be more brachialis and less bicep brachii.
Yeah.
But we do have some more data, because this same research group, they actually did a very similar study back in 2019. Once again, their participants trained for 8 weeks. One arm did rows, one arm did curls, untrained participants. And there was only one measurement point in this study. So from memory, I just suppose it was in the midpoint. And they saw an 11% increase from curls and 5% from rows. So it might be somewhere around that region.
Yeah.
And especially if you look at the midpoint from it. There is, from another research group, there's a study on lat pull-downs versus bicep curls. And they showed equal growth, plus 6% muscle thickness after 10 weeks in untrained men. So this would say that lat pull-downs would be better for biceps, but I don't really know. I don't feel them that much in my biceps when I do them. Maybe a tad more than rows, but I don't know.
I definitely feel my biceps more when doing lat pull-downs than doing dumbbell rows or barbell rows. But I think it depends a bit on the grip as well.
Probably.
Back when I used to be able to do chin-ups, my hands facing towards me, then I got a real good bicep pump.
Yeah.
But I never do the lat pull downs with my hands towards me. Now I'm using a neutral grip.
That is nice. I like neutral grips.
It's very nice. And I get a decent pump. When I move on to doing some preacher curls directly afterwards, I can feel that my biceps are already pre-exhausted.
Yeah. And that's what I don't really feel after I've done pull-ups, but maybe a tad.
Yeah, maybe you're too good at pull-ups.
Maybe too good. But yeah, so if we were to rank these just from a bicep perspective, I would suppose we put bicep curls or like barbell curls, dumbbell curls at the top. And then I would rank lat pull-downs or pull-ups at maybe like 70 to 80% of that effect. Yeah. And then rows at somewhere like 30 to 50% of the effect, depending a bit on technique. That would be my guess based on the current state.
Yeah, and these results won't change my standard recommendation for someone just starting up at the gym. If you're a beginner, you should focus on the bigger compound lifts, meaning for your back, you should do lat pull-downs or pull-ups if you're able to. And bicep curls and a direct tricep work, that can come later when you've maxed out your beginner gains. Because we do see in study after study that isolation works is really good for trained participants when they want to add some more meat. But you get a lot of it just from doing the compound lifts.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell beginners not to do bicep curls if they want to add some extra work for their arms, but that is with the prerequisite that it doesn't detract from the compound lifts. So I mean, and even if you do train just for the looks of it, I mean, doing lat pull downs and rows is going to do so much more for your looks than bicep curls are going to do. Yeah. But you might not see it when you look in the mirror because you will only see that your tiny little biceps has gained a vein. And that is super cool. But everyone else seeing you in 3D will notice that your back is thicker and wider, and that it looks really, really good.
Yeah. And if a beginner is these people are not listening to our podcast. We know that we have an older demographic, but if you were to say this to a young man, they would only hear you say, I wouldn't tell a beginner not to bicep curl, meaning, oh, you should only bicep curl. That's what Daniel said. Only do bicep curls.
Yeah, no. So like if I were to put these together into a workout, I would begin with either one of rows or pull-ups or lat pull-downs.
Yeah.
One row movement and one pulling down movement. And then the curl at the end, if you want to throw in a couple of sets from that.
Most definitely.
In our app, StrengthLog, which is a workout tracker where you jot down what you lifted, we have these like sets per week volume calculations in which we count rowing and pull down sets and pull-ups as a half bicep set.
Yeah.
Which rhymes pretty well with the research, and that is a common method in like volume overview studies.
We divide the muscles worked into primary and secondary. So when you do an exercise that has, for instance, your chest as a prime mover and your tricep as a secondary mover, you'll get a full set for each set for your chest. You get half a set for your tricep in that instance.
And the reason for why this number might be useful is, well, for one thing, you might want to compare against like the guidelines that we're getting from research, which is that like 10 hard sets for a muscle seems to be a very good landmark to aim for if you want to be close to optimal muscle growth. But later on, when you might want to increase that, you might want to track how much volume you're doing just to see that you're not doing anything crazy, or if you're not working some body part or whatever.
The issue with upper body exercises is some part of the shoulder is almost always in the mix. Meaning when I look at my stats in the app, I have like 40 weekly sets for my shoulders. And but they can take it. They
obviously they can.
Yeah, I'm quite proud of my shoulders. They are strong. That's the final part of my body that hasn't given up on me.
Yet.
It's a matter of time.
Yeah. So do track your training in our app. I mean, it's free. And there is even a bunch of free workouts hitting the back or the bicep, which you can follow in there to get some inspiration.
And there's also a bunch of free stats. If you pay for the app, you get stats overload, which for a beginner might even be counterproductive.
Yeah.
But you get the basic stats, the stats you actually need as a beginner from the free version, and it's free forever. You can log as many workouts as you want.
Yeah. I'm more excited than in a long time about back training, and I'm talking upper back training. I think it came from, I saw just some random dude on Instagram who had such a wide developed upper back, and I just thought, I want that. So I'm doing pull-ups and rows now.
Yeah.
But soon we're getting to the winter season when everyone wears sweaters, so you won't see it anyway.
No, but if you carry on through the full winter and the spring, you're gonna get a nicer back for next summer.
Yeah, and in a t-shirt or a shirt, it's visible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess do your rows, but not for bicep purposes. Although I do want to say that if someone were to train lat pull-downs or pull-ups and rows and not train any bicep curls, they would still have much better arms than someone who doesn't train. That would make a huge difference.
I believe so too. I believe you can do that for a long time when starting out. It's when you want to take those extra steps in your physique. When you, like, I'm tired of only having 40 centimeters around my upper arm. I want to surpass 45 centimeters so I don't have to quote studies all the time. Then you're going to need to eat your dumbbell curls and your tricep extensions and stuff like that.
And for those wondering what Philip refers to, we have a running joke in our company that if your upper arm circumference is above 45 centimeters, then you don't need to provide references for claims that you make about training and health. But if you are below 45 centimeters, you need to provide references.
Yeah, this is how it works. I still remember when our colleague or head of development for the app came into the office, and he had finally measured 40 centimeters around his upper arm. And he was like, I don't need to provide references. And dude, it's 45.
Yeah, 40 is the point where if you provide references, we might believe you. But if you're below 40, we won't believe you, even if you have references.
And this goes for women as well.
Yeah, it's...
we don't discriminate.
It's universal.
Yeah. This is just how it is.
All right. Let's stop this madness.
Let's leave it at that.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, probably with another new study.
Train hard, eat well, die anyway.